Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here at the top of Mount Chiliad for some more downhill chaos with a rather bizarre vehicle to start with. This is the Scarabee, I believe that's how it's pronounced. I have no idea if this is a real car or what it is. It looks completely and utterly bizarre. One of the strangest vehicles I think I've seen on GTA 5. But I wanted to give it a go. I wanted to see how it would fare down Mount Chiliad. It is, it's got rather large ground clearance. It is also massive. It barely fits on the road at quite a few parts of the track. I mean, down here, it's it's just about fits on the road. And on this opening run, I didn't really account for the brakes. Pretty damn quick accelerating vehicle, this one. Brakes not quite so good. It did have a peculiar problem with, well, in that case it was a Cougar, I think that it was on the course. It kind of doesn't deal with the little bumps quite so well. Like the Cougar launched it pretty much uncontrollably off the side of the mountain as I'm still trying to figure it out and get the car stopped. It only took a really small bump to upset the car. It could deal with the big stuff fine, but little bumps here and there could actually really upset the vehicle, which is not what I was expecting from, well, just look at the car. Even a car, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, little bumps really upset the vehicle. Getting the braking right is also quite important. You run wide through that first corner, that's also going to really upset the vehicle, and sure enough, we go tumbling our way down the mountain. I also love the spoiler on this on this car, carrying little too much speed into this section. A commonplace, seen many a crash in that manner, when you're just pushing your luck that little bit too much with the car running up the mountain face. And of course, once you've just run that little too wide, you're going to have some issues. Wasn't expecting to have spinning issues particularly with this car. I think I only did it once, just got a little unlucky bouncing it across one of the jumps. Managed to take a lot of speed across the landing of that particular jump. Did really well to just about keep it under control initially, but once we'd fired it down the side road and it kind of, I think it hit the mountain face there, it twisted the car, and then you're not going to be able to stop it. Once it's in the air, this thing doesn't have the best of brakes, you know, when you're under normal circumstances, but once it's bouncing around and most of the wheels aren't touching the ground, you've lost it. You're not going to be stopping it, especially, as I said, with this thing struggling under braking. Again, getting caught out from a peculiar bump. I don't quite know what set the car off there. I think the front of the car may have caught on the floor ever so slightly, and now we go very quickly down a nice smooth surface of Chiliad there. It's a nice smooth way of getting down without crashing into anything, but not quite where you want to be firing the car off of. Took a little while to get the hang of this vehicle. Got to really make sure you get it stopped through these corners. With the brakes as they were, it was definitely, quite important to get this thing stopped quickly. Decent power in the car, certainly, and decent grip as well for getting it through the corners. I also feared we might have real problems with this falling over. It looks like a kind of vehicle that you might see falling over a fair bit when trying to drive down Chiliad, but that wasn't the case. I don't think I actually rolled it sort of off a corner. I mean, I rolled it once it started tumbling and so on off the side of the mountain, but I didn't actually roll it off any of the corners. I got very lucky on this run, bouncing it off both sides of the mountain. Normally you can't get away with doing that, but the Scarabee did survive it on this attempt. That I was very surprised, considering the brakes aren't particularly good on this. Bouncing it off both of the sides and still keeping it under control and not really losing any time in that is pretty good going. It did like these bigger bumps, these bigger jumps. You can take a lot of speed. It did like the landings on them, no problem. And then we kind of really chuck it down the the side road, turning a little bit too late. Managed to again get away with it. We're a little bit on two wheels around that second to last corner, flat out around the final turn, and fly the car across the line, even if it does get a little bit tipped up on to its side, and then all brought back under control quite neatly, I would say. For certainly for crossing the line at Chiliad, that's quite neatly under control. Anyway, yeah, a good vehicle, a very bizarre looking thing, and the brakes were a little bit on the questionable side, certainly, but it dealt with all of the nasty stuff fantastically well. Had some issues with the smaller bumps. Up next, from the rather crazy Scarabee to something a little bit more sensible. The Porsche Carrera GT, I say a little bit more sensible. We are taking a supercar down the side of a mountain, but yeah, this is a really rather cool mod vehicle. This one, lots of detail on the car. Sure enough, the hikers, well, there's a car pointing down a dirt path. You know, you don't really want to stand in front of it, especially when the engine's revving and so on. So they deserve that for just getting in the way, basically. The Carrera, now, supercars, yes, I know supercars shouldn't really survive going down this particular course, but they do because it's GTA 5, and they do tend to go pretty damn quickly as well. Opening run, things had been going quite well until I clipped the dirt on the inside, and sure enough, the Porsche immediately fell over. We've seen many cars roll at that particular point. I was expecting to see the Scarabee roll at that corner. It didn't, but the Porsche will. So, yeah, you know, it's just got to be wary of these cars. We have seen things like the Voltic. It's actually kind of almost a grip roll that causes the problem. These supercars have a lot of turning grip, so you turn into these corners, the wheels get lifted up off the ground, and it's because you have so much grip is kind of what pulls some of these supercars over. That time around, I managed to save the car from rolling, but we then ended up pointing backwards anyway. And trying to get the hang of this corner was a little bit of a pain. Next time around, exactly the same thing. I thought I was doing a better job, but apparently not. Again, it was a case of I saved the car from rolling, although it probably would have been better just to have had it on its roof. It might not have then tumbled off the mountainside quite so quickly. Yeah, it stopped it rolling initially, but then we weren't going to stop anyway, and, well, ended up quite a long way down the mountain. So that was definitely something to be very aware of in the Porsche. It did feel a pretty quick car in between these slight silly moments. Turned in just too soon to the hairpin. We've seen vehicles roll over there. The car that's quite easy to roll anyway, you turn in a little bit too soon. You kind of run it across the mound on the inside. You're going to have problems. Getting bumped across the landing of the first of the big jumps there is also not really ideal. I'd slightly lost the back end before I took off from the jump, and it's something we've seen quite a lot, is that once you kind of mess up one corner and it's going to throw you off track further down. Similar story for this one. I was out of position coming towards the jump, and it was all messed up. Did some spectacular flips and managed to land the car on its wheels eventually. It was another case of being a little out of position. I slightly fighting the car as you take off from the jump, and that's going to mess up your landing. And you can see what can happen when you're at such speeds on such a narrow course as this one. As we run down the little escape road towards the finish, this run was all going very nicely until the second to last corner and the bumps. And sure enough, soon as we started bouncing across the bumps, that was it. The Porsche was up on its side, and we were going towards a rock face. So that run was over. That one there annoyed me a little bit, as did this one. Taking a jump, there's kind of it's not even really a proper jump, but if you try and cut the corner a little bit too much, you get airborne. And the way the car got airborne, it got airborne on its side as it was sort of turning. So that didn't end particularly well down that part either. So it did take a little while to get the Carrera down the mountain. It's got to be very aware how easy it is it's pretty much to grip roll the car, so having to give just a little bit of a wider berth through some of these corners. It was a nice vehicle to drive, don't get me wrong. I do quite like driving this car down here. It was quite nice having brakes on the vehicle as well to get it stopped around here. It did have a couple of problems, and I can't figure out quite why it was. It did not like getting around the tight hairpin. For whatever reason, it just didn't quite want to get itself through the corner. So had a little bit of a faff again for the second time in a row, bouncing my car off the mountainside ever so slightly, but managed to get away with it, still wanting to lift up onto two wheels, having to just be a little bit careful down here, not wanting to carry too much speed, not wanting the car to go up onto its side, and then across this fast jump towards the end, still got the car wanting to bounce around and to go up onto two wheels, but keep it under control. As we run up towards the second to last corner, this is where you really had to be very careful with the Porsche, and you did lose a little bit of time having to be slow through there so as not to get the car up on its side and be affected by the bumps. It's across the line though for the Carrera, and again getting it under control across the jump. Yeah, a decent enough car, certainly, but had to be aware of that grip rolling. That was the big thing with the Porsche. It also wasn't a huge fan of the bumps. It's okay, it's better than some cars we've had, but certainly you saw around that second to last corner. Had to be careful. Final vehicle for today, it is the BMW M1 Procar. I am a rather big fan of the Procar. It's a fantastic vehicle to drive on every game I've ever played with it. I was also really pleased to see a black and orange livery for the car and a number 21. What more could I possibly ask for from a vehicle? This is another really cool, very, very detailed mod. Some poor hikers. Yeah, that time they didn't have time to get in my way. I just kind of launched, and we may have slightly beheaded one of them. The thing that immediately struck me about this BMW, first of all, it feels quite stiff. I mean, okay, yeah, it's a race car, that's perhaps not too surprising, but yes, it did not really, it wasn't particularly compliant with the bumps on the way down here. The other big issue that I had with the car is it doesn't really get turned in, like, at all. So I tend to take a slightly different line through that corner now to stop cars rolling, tend to take a higher line as we're doing through here. Honestly, the BMW was never going to roll, so I didn't actually have to worry too much about it. But on that first run I was trying to get the car turned in. This next run again, it was there was a little bit over eager on the handbrake, but I was having a real fight trying to get the car to turn into the corners. Not quite sure why, but it did not want to get the front end turned in. Too much speed again, down towards turn 1. An easy mistake to make. The BMW was a pretty quick car. The brakes were pretty good as well. I got it bouncing across the bumps there while I wasn't quite slowed down enough, and then we're going to go tumbling off the mountain. You only have to be a fraction too late on the brakes. It's only a tiny amount we're talking here that you've got on the brakes too late, or you've carried a bit too much speed through wherever, and you're going to have that kind of a crash going down Chiliad. Coming up towards this final high-speed jump with the Beamer, we get just lifted off the ground ever so slightly on landing, and in the time that the car's in the air, I've lost steering. We're heading towards the rock face, goes for a roll, and then we go tumbling down the mountain before gracefully coming to a halt. I love that you got the hoses sticking out the front as well. I think there's really cool detail on this vehicle. It is a bit of a shame that the front end just doesn't want to turn into any of the corners. Another place, you've actually been seeing it a little bit more, and I've only ever had this particular problem with cars on the PC version of GTA 5. The front ends are bouncing up on the landing of that first of the heavy jumps, and the BMW got caught out by it once as well as we're firing it down the side road. Yeah, don't mess with the bushes, it's a silly idea. It's... I honestly hadn't had a problem with this car going through the bushes, so when I was kind of almost straight lining my way down there, I didn't really think about the BMW having a problem, but it does. When you're going down there, don't drive through the bushes. It just tips the car sideways enough to unsettle it and throw it off the course. So yeah, no cheeky shortcuts for the for the M1 down that part. Running a little bit too wide out there is not where you want to be. While it didn't go tumbling off the mountain, it's enough to bounce it and spin the car around in a circle. So avoided the bushes, we survived around the second to last corner. I have never had a crash here before, but this kind of sums up the understeer of the BMW. Almost every vehicle is flat out around that last turn. In the M1, that is not the case. Nope, we crashed kind of getting to the finish line. So yeah, that's not a problem I've ever had with a car at all in this series, but it just doesn't. It's just got so much understeer. It just cannot get through these corners. Otherwise, does pretty well. It is a little bit on the stiffer side. It certainly feels a little bit awkward getting it across some of these bumps, but it's nothing terrible. Certainly we've had cars that have dealt with bumps worse. I mean, it's not constantly bottoming itself out on sections and so on. It's not terrible. Certainly the biggest issue is that you've got to really quite slow it down a lot to get it to turn in. Amusingly though, despite that, it got through the hairpin a little bit better than the Porsche. Still not sure why the Carrera, like I was chucking on the handbrake, whatever I did, it just couldn't really carry that much momentum through that corner. It just didn't like it. And even with the understeer of this BMW, it was much better at getting through that turn. It felt very slow when driving this car down here. It is a quick accelerating car, decent top speed and so on. And it did feel quite, you have to sort of wait quite a lot to get on the power and brake quite a bit early just to make sure that you got the car under control, make sure that you could get it through these turns. Landing in the jumps, though, weren't too bad. Again, certainly nothing worse than we've seen in previous vehicles. Making sure not to argue with the bushes this time around down here, up towards the second to last corner. The bumps are a little bit nasty, but we've got it around here. Towards this final turn, the back end lets go across a bump, so we have 2 crashes across the finish line. This time, though, we did actually make it across the line, so I was going to count the time. I got it turned for the corner, that one around, but it just ran out of rear grip and spat the car sideways, so we ended up, crashing our way across the finish line with the BMW. Kind of glad. I think there's normally a couple of people down there that would normally have got splattered by the BM, but never mind. On to the times, and it is a mighty quick time from the Scarabee. Goes in 9th with a 1:21.4. That is seriously quick for a car getting down Chiliad. It beats the Brawler and beats the Insurgent. It didn't feel like it was that fast, in all honesty, going down there. But, it really sets a very, very quick time. That acceleration in the vehicle obviously can carry some decent corner speed and deals with the bumps very, very well. Gives it a very good time. The Carrera GT goes into 23rd place, a 1:24.8. That's a respectable time, certainly, from a car that very much liked to go up onto its side. It's a 1/10 of a second down on the Aston Martin, the GT3 race car. It's only a couple of tenths down on the Shafter and the Karuma. This is pretty good going for the Carrera. A good car. It was its tendency to want to roll, to go up onto 2 wheels that slowed that one down a little bit. And the M1 Procar is down in 40th place. Not surprised by this one particularly. 1:29.2. That's actually not too bad a time. It's around the Ferrari 458, the Guardian, the Shelby Cobra, and so on. That's pretty, for a car that I had so much issue trying to get it to turn into the corners, that's better than I perhaps feared it might end up with for the M1 Procar. So, all of the cars did admirably well. That Scarabee is stupid quick going down Chiliad. The Porsche, pretty good considering its tendency to want to roll. And the M1 Procar, I love it. It's a great car. It's just a little bit understeery on here for getting down the incredible demands of Mount Chiliad. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. I'll put a link to all of the mods that I've used in the description so you can download them, have a go with them yourself. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.